Recently, former Belgian diplomat Etienne d'Avignon passed away. According to the family of assassinated Congolese premier Lumumba, it is deeply regrettable that Etienne d'Avignon's death has led to the dismissal of the criminal case that had been pending against him for 15 years. He was accused of involvement in the unlawful detention and bad treatment of Patrice Lumumba, who was murdered by pro-Belgian Congolese militias in 1961 during the height of the Congo Crisis. An incredible historical reckoning is unfolding in Brussels, proving that time doesn't bury the ghosts of colonialism. More than 6 decades after Patrice Lumumba, the fiery 34-year-old independence icon who became the Congo's first prime minister, was brutally executed and his body dissolved in acid, a Belgian court has delivered a bombshell ruling. The last surviving suspect could have finally stood trial. That was the then 93-year-old Etienne d'Avignon. Back in 1961, he was just a trainee diplomat on the ground. He later climbed the ranks and became a vice president of the European Commission. In recent years, he stood alone as the sole living defendant out of 10 men originally sued by the Lumumba family back in 2011, facing accusations of plotting Lumumba's unlawful capture, transfer, and torture. The leader's grandson, Medi Lumumba, claimed Belgium is finally confronting its history. These were not the only allegations the Belgian state faced. 5 women of mixed heritage have been suing the Belgian state for 8 years. They started in 2018 suing the Belgian state for a crime against humanity committed against children of mixed heritage in the Belgian Congo. The 5 appellants were taken from their mothers while still minors as part of a policy of racial segregation orchestrated by the Belgian colonial state. They were placed in Belgian Catholic orphanages. Attorney Michel Hirsch said, "This is the first time a European state has been ordered to compensate victims for a crime against humanity committed during colonization. It is a major victory for justice and for the development of European law." The story of the Congo and Belgium started with a greedy king named Leopold II of Belgium. In the latter half of the 19th century, as the African continent was about to be carved up by the European colonial powers, Leopold II sent adventurer Henry Morton Stanley to the area. Leopold's claims were formalized during the 1885 Berlin Conference, and with that, the Congo Free State was born. Do notice that this wasn't a Belgian colony. Yet, it was a private domain of the Belgian king who was eager to make it an area that must yield the greatest possible profit in the shortest possible time with a minimum of cost. The unseen urge to make as much profit as possible naturally and almost inevitably led both to massive exploitation of the Congolese and to numerous barbaric abuses. These claimed many lives. Dutch historian Wesseling pointed out the disastrous consequences. The damage done in the Free State was enormous. The population of the Congo region, according to the most authoritative estimate, declined from 20 to 10 million people. In other words, halved between 1880 and 1920. Massacres were the most spectacular of these, but not the main cause in numerical terms. Most important were the famines that broke out as a result of entire populations fleeing the Free State military. Most important, however, were the diseases, such as smallpox and sleeping sickness. The latter, the Black Death of Africa, killed up to 80% of the population in some areas. However, living conditions for the Congolese people slowly improved after the Belgian state took over in 1908. The horrors weren't forgotten, certainly not by Patrice Lumumba, who on June 30th, 1960, stood right in front of Belgian dignitaries and King Baudouin and delivered a legendary unscripted speech. He didn't offer polite gratitude. Instead, he fiercely condemned Belgium for subjecting his people to humiliating slavery. Though Belgium had technically handed over the keys to the country, they were desperate to maintain a grip on Congo's vast mineral wealth. Lumumba was immediately seen as a threat to Western economic interests. In 2010, Belgian journalist David van Rijbroek wrote an extensive work on the history and the people of Congo. The chapter that discussed the turbulent years of the First Congolese Republic, he begins as follows. Everyone knew there would have to be a good deal of improvising during that first period after independence. That things would not run smoothly as burnished silk was only to be expected. But that Congo, during the first 6 months of its existence, would have to deal with a serious military mutiny, the massive exodus of those Belgians who had remained behind, an invasion by the Belgian army, a military intervention by the United Nations, logistical support from the Soviet Union, an extremely heated stretch of the Cold War, an unparalleled constitutional crisis, 2 secessions that covered a third of its territory, and, to top it all off, the imprisonment, escape, arrest, torture, and murder of its prime minister. No, absolutely no one had seen that coming. The first Congolese premier, Patrice Lumumba, was murdered in 1961. What led to his death? See, Lumumba was an African nationalist who, like Indonesian President Sukarno and Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser, wanted to chart an independent course, free from the influence of both Washington and Moscow. Lumumba was not a communist. Nevertheless, the CIA feared that Lumumba harbored communist sympathies and therefore sought to eliminate him. That was because the Congolese leader had turned to the USSR for help. Soon after independence was declared, the mineral-rich Katanga region declared its own independence. Meanwhile, Belgian troops were sent to the region to protect fleeing European citizens after an army mutiny caused widespread chaos. Eventually, these had to be replaced by UN troops. Lumumba initially hoped that UN troops would recapture the rebellious province of Katanga for the Congo, but later turned to the Soviet Union for help. At the insistence of the United States, Congolese President Joseph Kasa-Vubu decided to dismiss the troublesome prime minister. But because Lumumba remained immensely popular among large segments of the Congolese population and threatened to regain power, the CIA made plans to assassinate him. The assassination plans were never carried out. However, CIA agent Larry Devlin did, give his close friend Colonel Joseph Mobutu the green light to hand Lumumba over to his enemies in Katanga in early January 1961.
Patrice Lumumba comes back to Leopoldville a prisoner. The former Congo premier, who was captured when he fled inland, no longer wears the tuft of whiskers on his chin that helped to identify him. His arrest provoked several clashes between Lumumba followers and Congolese army troops. But Congo's strongman, Colonel Joseph Mobutu, shown as he watches Lumumba arrive, says he is prepared to put down any uprising. At the same time, the Soviet Union has been demanding Lumumba's release and immediate talks at the United Nations.
The decision to transfer Lumumba to Katanga was a trap sprung by a unified front. The authorities in Leopoldville, their Belgian advisors, and officials back in Brussels. But the ultimate decision to murder him, that was made by the Katangese authorities. Chief among them was Interior Minister Godefroid Munungo, the ruthless grandson of Mziri, the notorious 19th century Afro-Arab slave trader who had violently conquered the Lunda kingdom. Following a tense meeting, the battered prisoners were shoved into the back of a car, joining a grim convoy of vehicles and 2 military jeeps. After roughly 45 minutes, the vehicle veered off the main road. Moments later, they ground to a halt in the middle of nowhere. The prisoners were forced out. There, in the wooded savannah, just off the road, they were confronted by a shallow, freshly dug trench. Standing around it was a chilling audience. Armed, uniformed police and gendarmes alongside suits worn by high-ranking politicians, including President Moise Tshombe and Minister Munungo. 4 Belgians were also present. Bruised, broken, and brutally beaten, the 3 prisoners were led one by one to the edge of the pit. They had been on Katanga soil for less than 5 hours. Barely 4 meters away stood a firing squad. 4 Katangese volunteers armed with a submachine gun. 3 times a deafening volley of gunfire shattered the silence of night. Lumumba was saved for last at exactly 9:43 p.m. on January 17th, 1961. The body of Congo's first democratically elected prime minister tumbled backward into the dirt. Etienne d'Avignon had consistently denied the allegations of his involvement. Mr. d'Avignon's death cannot erase Belgium's legal responsibility for the assassination of Patrice Lumumba, according to Wolfgang Kalek, Secretary General of the European Center for Constitutional and Human Rights and legal advisor to the Lumumba family. So, will a 65-year-old murder case finally have some legal ramification? Only time will tell.